I really didn't know what the Purple Prize was, and I've known about Purple Metal because Donovan, when Donovan started the concept. So it's really great to be here. I'm just a storyteller, really, and just kind of here just to share something that to me is not about change, but really maybe about recovery. Because I think change is really hard, but recovery is plugging back in. So has anybody that you know of, or maybe you have done that, what I'm observing is one of the most beautiful things that's happening around the planet, called 23andMe or Ancestry.com. Anybody done that? You raise your hand. So, now, do you know your heritage before you did it?
Well, I had ideas.
Yeah. What was your heritage that you knew of before you did it?
Well, I've got a lot going on. East Indian from my father's side, Spanish, some Middle Eastern and Turkish on my mother's side, and then there was some other stuff that kind of emerged in the DNA profile that I didn't tell you.
That came up.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because people are doing that. They're looking at 23andMe, they're doing Ancestry.com. And for many of us, it's not because we don't know what our ancestry is. It's because we're digging deeper than what we know. Because I don't think it's about knowing that I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Irish. It's about who am I and what is my relevance. So today, one of the things that I want to do is I want to share the relevance, maybe reveal it, of what you are in this room to what's happening around the planet and in Hawaii. So, are you folks familiar with this, the Sustainability Development Goals? Okay, so good. So I don't have to go over the 17. And then, next slide. And then the Aloha Plus Challenge.
No.
So, good. Now we're going to go to Ancestry.com. It's about 2011 or 12, and I was requested to attend a meeting at Auntie Laura Thompson's home. That's Nainoa and Myron Thompson's mom's house. And I was invited there because we were working on a celebration and a remembrance for someone while he was still here, who established something called Malama Hawaii with Nainoa's dad, Myron Pinky Thompson. And because Kenny Brown was still here, if you really want to talk about a mythical figure and a legend, it's Kenny Brown, who gathered young folks years ago, almost 25 years ago, maybe a little over 25 years ago, to have a conversation about how we Malama Hawaii, care for Hawaii. And Kenny was not well, so I was invited to this meeting that had been going on, and once a month I was invited to this meeting to talk about the celebration, so that it wasn't just to honor Kenny, but it was to really maybe cause an epidemic of people to be aware and to focus on Malama Hawaii. And then I was attending those meetings, we had that celebration. Pretty soon, one of the ladies who was in that meeting asked me if I would come to another meeting. And that was with an initiative called Hawaii Green Growth. And Hawaii Green Growth was a group of individuals who got together to form a partnership to infuse possibilities of focusing on the planet when APEC was celebrated in 2011 in Hawaii. And they wanted to get it on the agenda. That caring for the future of our planet and our natural resources and the livability of our people was significant, not just to Hawaii, but the planet. And so that was very successful in being a part of the APEC. And once it was done, now, okay, they've done all of that. Now what are we gonna do? Are we just, that was it? You know, we had a big craft fair and the craft fair is over. And they decided to keep it going. And that's when I got invited to that follow-up year meeting. And in this meeting were a lot of environmental folks, government folks. And the most interesting thing happened to me was that they began with this icebreaker, and they took us all out into this lobby. And I felt like such an outsider, like I am right now. And because everyone else, I know who they are, but I wasn't involved in the discussion. And they said, would everybody in this lobby identify 2 individuals that you would like to have a relationship with? And I thought, okay, so I'm the outsider, so I'm just gonna hang on the outside. And put yourself equal distance between these 2 individuals. And as everyone moves, eventually everyone will be equal parts from each other and there will be no more movement. So we just kept kind of just morphing around, and eventually everybody stopped. So they asked one person, so who did you identify? And they said, so-and-so, and Pono. People were triangulating me, one person. Why? Because we don't do a good job of working with people or communicating or crossing bridges with people who are in business. So then the next person, the first person that lady had identified said, okay, what about you? Who are you focused on? I said, so-and-so and Pono. Okay, so now there's 2 people? So then they went to the other person and said, what about you? I was the first 4 people, and they stopped already. And I thought, this is a trip. But this is really what's a trip. I went home that day after a full day retreat, and I sent an email to those 4 individuals, and I said, I really took seriously what you said, and I'd like to take you to lunch, each one of them, separately. Because I'd like to know you too. And you know, only one of them replied. The reason why I'm sharing that is because this isn't a theory, you guys. This is not theory, this is a lifestyle. And they're not bad people, but sometimes I think we go through exercises and we might think this is just a good practice. It's not practice. She is not going to school. And I also believed what happened at Parkland last year. The children have no idea how powerful they are. If all the children in America and their parents supported them in not going to school, until a change happened, I'll tell you what, change would happen. And the reason why is, that would shut down the economic system in the United States. Children not going to school. Talk about the stoppage of the flow of funding in America. People would go crazy. They're not going to school, the money ain't flowing. So much power in their lifestyle. Anyway, so what happened was I became a part of the Hawaii Green Growth. And in 2013 and 14, we did a strategic planning effort. And there was a decision made that this was going to be a full-fledged, ongoing objective. And what it was doing was assembling 6 goals that had been identified in Hawaii, like energy, like food production, like the management of our natural resources, and reducing our waste, and green jobs, workability. Those kinds of things that we could put together as a focus collectively throughout the state with all state leaders. And we didn't come up with those goals, we just pulled them together into something we call the Aloha Plus Challenge. And so we launched that. Our organization became the fiscal sponsor of Hawaii Green Growth. So a business organization adopted this initiative because I think that's the fastest way to get everybody together at the same table. And then in November, Hawaii Green Growth and the Aloha Plus Challenge was identified by the United Nations as a 2030 hub. We were identified we were the first island to be identified as one of the 2030 United Nations hubs. And I'm sharing that with you just looking back in our genealogy, very significantly, why this happened is not because this is a recognition and reward for Hawaii. I really believe it's because what's happening in this room and what needs to happen in this room and in other rooms in Hawaii right now. That the United Nations needed us because those goals are great, but how do you make it happen? How do we make those 27 objectives happen? And for me, I could take all 27 of those objectives, 17 of those objectives, and I can put them in each one of these sixes. We don't need to make it complicated. But the Aloha Plus and the SDGs, really, Aloha Plus is, to me, the 17 SDGs. So now, what did Alec want me to share with you folks? Please. So, this is a very special lady in Hawaii's history. We're from Maui and Lahaina, and Tipilahi was born in Lahaina. She's my grandaunt. She was born in 1910. She passed away in 1985. Notice it says, proponent of Aloha, keeper of the secrets of Hawaii. In your heritage, all of them, there have always been librarians. In all of our heritage, regardless of where you're from, there are people that I call the librarians, and they are the keepers of the keys of the library of our heritage. And you guys, and you don't need to take any notes. Because I think they're making a video of this. In 1970, she gave a prophecy, and the prophecy was that in the 21st century, the world would search for peace, and they'll look to Hawaii, because Hawaii is the key, and that key is Aloha. How did someone become the keeper of the secrets? How does someone become the librarian and the keeper of the key of the library? Well, she was given this key by a man who was born in 1859. His name was ʻOhana, who was known as the patriarch of Pono. In 1961, he was 102 years old and he was about to pass. This man, if you want to have a symbol of maybe who he was, to me, he was Yoda. Today, we practice something called Ailua, our martial art. He was the one who taught the Aloha, who taught the 5 Aloha in 1970, who practiced in darkness. He taught Charles Kent. Well, in 1961, he's 102 years old and he's about to pass away. And he sent 2 men to Oahu, said, go to the windward side and find this woman and bring her to me. So they put Atipilahi on a plane, took her to Kona Hospital, and on April 13, 1961, he did what is known in our heritage as ha. He breathed his last breath in Atipilahi, and she said it felt like being hit with lightning. And all of a sudden now, she's a librarian. How does that happen? How does that happen? I believe that in everyone's heritage, that all over the world that has happened. And what's not passed, I believe, is all the information and knowledge in the world. See, I shared this at Emerson Collective, and that's Steve Jobs' wife's foundation, and I had an all-hands meeting last July. I was invited to be with them for an hour. They shut down all operations just to sit with you and listen. And when I shared this with them, I said, you know, this is what I believe. Well, this is what I know. Google, Microsoft, Apple, they did not create the cloud. Who created the cloud? The cloud was created from the beginning of time. And Einstein spoke of E equals mc squared in the theory of relativity. That energy is constant and it just changes form. So I believe my words today, your thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, they go someplace. Where do they go? Today we call it the cloud. And today we now have tools that have frequencies that allows us to access them. And just what I believe is that what's past actually was a frequency. A frequency that allowed people to have access to the cloud. And all over the world, I believe people have had those frequencies. For some, it comes through a prayer. For others, it might be through a mic. For others, it might be a dance, like our native cousins on the continent. For others, it could be extreme exercises, meditation, trinkets, all the things to just get us to a frequency that allows us to access. And so she became the keeper of the secrets. And I had a very special short period of time in 1976 when I was 13 years old, and Auntie Pilani took me for a walk. After a long meeting with adults, and I was the only child in the room. And she just said, come walk with me, and we went for a walk. And that walk has affected my entire life. Because she said, I am going to share something with you, but you're not allowed to share this with anyone else. She was a keeper of our language, and she said, I'm not going to teach you how to speak Hawaiian, which is what most people went to her for. She said, I'm going to teach you how to think Hawaiian. There's a difference, and it's from the inside, not from the outside. She said, if you think Hawaiian, regardless of the language or the words you use, it'll be the language of aloha. And aloha cuts through everything to seek out significant, relevant connection. She shared things with me I had never heard her share with anyone else publicly. And she asked me not to share it with anybody. It was not to be taught, it was to be practiced and lived. And it was just between she and I. And maybe someday, only with her permission could I share what she was sharing with me. And she died 9 years later without giving me permission. And so I never thought I would share what I share today because she was gone. But somehow I got permission in 2010 for 34 years. And then we shared what I do share today. And it's about aloha in a very special way. And then about 1.5 years ago, something came out of me because of a Hawaii Green Growth meeting that I did not attend that revealed a foundation of why we are so significant and what the recovery is. And so that is what I'm going to share now. This man comes to Hawaii in 1778, bumps into us. Because he didn't know where we were, so kind of bumped into us. He had been to many, many beautiful places around the world, and it wasn't because we were the most beautiful place that made us different. There are many beautiful places. He bypassed Oahu and he headed for Kauai, where he anchored his ship. And this is what I imagine one of his conversations was as he's passing Oahu. Wow, what a beautiful place. But what are all those stone walls in the water? What is that? What is that? And there's hundreds of them. Kind of too big to be a swimming pool. Because there's no concept of that. Eventually, he would get to look inside, right? And what did he see? These people are farming the ocean? And look, there's so much in the ocean. Who are these people? No concept of aquaculture. So, they saw our production, they saw our innovation, they saw our ingenuity and our effort. And they heard our word. And what did they see our effort as? They saw our effort as this. And they heard our word as this. Yes? They saw our effort as work, and they heard the word we use for our effort as hana. So they said, hana is work. And 240 years ago, it didn't matter because we knew what this word was. In fact, when they used this word, we thought they were talking about this. But 240 years later, what do we all know? This is this. And today I will tell you. Next. And next. Hana is hana and work is work, and they're not the same thing. What is work? This is different elements of work. First of all, we really do need to construct what is work. Work is something you do until you can get somebody else to do it for you. That's not hana. That can include slavery. That's not hana. Work is something you do until you don't have to do it anymore. I am telling you that is not hana. Hana is hana and work is work, and it's not the same thing. So what is hana? Hana. As we ha, we na. And what is na? N. What is the N sound? The N sound. The N sound is for the word Noah. Noah. Noah means to unleash, to set free. And what are we setting free? Akahai. And akahai is grace. And what is grace? Grace is you leave things better than you found them. So hana is as we would ha, we na. That's not work. We would hana on each other, hana on the lau, hana on the aina, hana on the vai, the kai, the pohaku. That's hana, that we are unleashing our grace, that we leave it better than we found it. Go ahead. Now, what happened was they heard us reference a group of people like I would reference you as ʻOhana, endearingly. We would address a people, say, ʻOhana, na ʻOhana. And when they thought about addressing a group of people endearingly, what would they think of? So they heard our word, and they thought what they were thinking about. So they said, this is this. Now, 240 years ago, it didn't matter, because we still knew what that was. 240 years later, we all think these two things are the same thing. I never told anybody this until September 2017. This was supposed to be. I am very, very disruptive. You guys, sorry, I'm breaking up some really traditional things we learned in our education system. Go ahead. ʻOhana is ʻOhana and family is family, and they're not the same thing. Next. What is this ʻOhana? So this word ʻO has its own meaning, and that meaning is eternal. And Kipilahi wrote one book that got published, and it was about Oahu. She intended to write one for every island, but she didn't make it. And she explained that Oahu was named by an ancient seer who had identified this island as the intellectual, spiritual center of the island groups, the Pacific, and the universe. That its original intention, Oahu, was meant to be the spiritual, intellectual center of the universe, the world, the Pacific, but would lose its identity to commerce, industrialism, and trade. And the desire for wealth and riches, it would lose its identity when its original intention was to be the spiritual, intellectual center. O eternal Oahu altar. Got it? So that O, not every O is that O. There are only a few words that have that O. That is the same O as this one. Because if you are an ʻOhana, all that is everyone who's a part of an ʻOhana, what that means is that we hana forever. That's what makes us ʻOhana. That in ʻOhana, everyone shares your hana. And it's not one person's hana is more significant or less significant, more important, more valuable or less valuable than anyone else's. The hana I share right now is meant to go forth forever. And in the concept that what I'm sharing now is shared forever. Someone had to keep the fire going. Somebody had to be cleaning the all white to make sure it was flowing. Someone was in the makaha making sure that it was okay and it was also flowing properly. Others were picking and pounding the vauke to make clothing. Some were kanu, the kalo. Others were papaku'iai. Everyone had a hana, and we needed everyone to learn, develop, innovate, elevate their hana. That's what made us hana. Or made us ʻOhana. And there was no racial issue, there was no gender issue, there was no religious issue, because it wasn't about those things. It was about everyone's hana. Every child had a hana, and we needed it, and they needed it. And it wasn't, okay, I did mine, now what do I get? We all understood that what everybody shared was our hana. That's what makes us ʻOhana forever. As a result, we had so much more than we needed. Our productivity was incredibly high, and that's why we documented it. We have never seen such industrious people. Who are these people? Next. There are only two ways to grow and expand the ʻOhana. Now, see any connection to these words? See the root? Those are the two ways that you can grow and expand the ʻOhana. Hanau, hanai. Why hanau? Why is that? Why is hanai adopt? Because when my wife and I, 30 years ago, gave birth to Shanta, we hana in relationship to where she came from. And where did she come from? She came from our spirit. This one comes from mine and Dawn's ʻOhana. She came from us. So we hana in relationship to where she's from, our ʻOhana. So we hana, hanau, hana in relationship to where she is from. She's from our ʻOhana. Hanai, because we hana in relationship. None of you came from my ʻOhana, so you can only come from one other place. Io, our Creator. So we hana in relationship to where you came from. And I believe the Creator brought you to me. That is what we recognize. You can only come to me one of two ways. It's either through my ʻOhana or through Io. And that's why we have hanau and hanai, and those are both considered the makana, or gifts, that build and grow and expand the ʻOhana. Next. Now, this book was written by Nana Viri, and she also, Auntie Bilahi, they're all Jedi. And you know, most people today, if you really observe our processes, you know what we're really creating in abundance? I mean, like major population growth. Stormtroopers and rebel fighters. It's like crazy. And they behave like stormtroopers and rebel fighters. You know, it's kind of ridiculous to me because my teachers were Jedi and they don't do stuff like that. It's kind of like just unimpressive. Just kind of stupid. But that's what we do because that's our process. Well, my dad calls me in 1989 one evening. He says, Nana wants to see you. So I went over to her house in Kahala, and she had just published her book, Change We Must. That's a Jediism, by the way. Not we must change, change we must. Nana was born in 1906, and she tells a story of one day visiting her grandmother. Her grandmother hunai'd her, and she lived in an area called Pu'uloa, which is at the mouth of Pearl Harbor. And her grandmother's pet was that 20-foot tiger shark that is famed to be the guardian of Pearl Harbor. And so she raised it from a pup and swam with it and would feed it. So that was a family on Oahu. But she tells a story when she was 6. One day while I was there, children of the village who had been playing in front of the house called out to my grandmother, "E kupuna, he malihini kea, e hoia maila." Grandmother, there is a stranger coming. My grandmother responded, "Ke hiki mai ka malihini kahea mai au. When he arrives, call me." When he arrived, the children called, "E kupuna, ua hoia maila." He has arrived. My grandmother came, stood on the lanai, and said to the stranger, "E komo mai, kipa mai, e pa'ina, come in and dine." While they were eating, I sat on the floor of the lanai to eavesdrop. When he was through eating, the visitor thanked my grandmother, and she came forward with a little pugine, a coconut dish, with salt in it, extended her hand. The visitor took 3 lumps of salt, put them in his mouth, and went off. When the stranger left, I asked my grandmother if she knew him. "Oli," she said. "He malihini hoi." No, he was a stranger, he's a visitor. When I asked her why she fed him, she got angry, ordered me to sit on the floor in front of her, and said, "I want you to remember these words for as long as you live and never forget them." So, grandmother, did you know that man? "Oli, he malihini hoi." Why did you feed him? Sit down. And I want you to remember these words for as long as you live and never forget them. Ole au I hanai, hanai. Ole au I hanai aku nei ke kanaka. Aka hanai, aku nei au I ka ohane, a ke akua I loko ona. I was not feeding the man. I was entertaining the Spirit of God within him. There's no doubt. I was 6 years old when this happened, and I've never forgotten my grandmother's words. This practice of honoring the other was so much a part of the culture that it needed no name. Today we call it the aloha spirit, but to the Hawaiians of old it was inherent and natural. They lived it. To feed a stranger passing by, that is pure aloha. Today we have to be taught it because we are so far removed from the culture and we have given it a name. Rich in metaphor, the Hawaiian language is melodious and graceful like the people. The Hawaiians said, "Hina ne ka olelo." The language is a riddle. Before the missionaries came and converted the language into the written word, the Hawaiians used figures of speech that was like poetry. This use of the language vanished long ago. Hawaiians today speak the missionary language, a literal type of Hawaiian. The riddle is gone. This is tragic. The riddle is not God. The riddle is beneath us, it's with us, and it's time to avatar. Next. So today, what you see on the right is what our system has taught us. It is our economic, education, political system has taught us what's on the right. What you see on the left is what Auntie Pilohi gave me when I was 13 years old, 43 years ago, to practice and to live. That is my model. I believe what's on the right is the reason for this epidemic of anger which exists in the world today. That is at its core. What's on the right is low bar. What's on the left is high bar. What's on the right is transactional, and what's on the left is relational. reason why we have such an angry world is because our entire system is based on a transactional model. And we are relational people. So most people are tracing transactions, and what is suffering is relationships at the expense of relationships. Because I was just different, I was told that I have to live this, and my model is a relational model, so I focus on relationships, and as a result, I have transactions. Foster relationships, because I know what we are, ʻOhana. Next. So we're trying to recover these things, yes? We're trying to recover what is the ahupua'a. We're trying to recover the loho'ia. And we're trying to recover it with what? Can you back up one? Yeah. We're trying to recover it with what? With hana. Hana what? The only hana we know today, you guys. Which is what? That! But there's a problem. And the problem is this hana that on the right didn't build these things. Because these things were built over 500 to 700 years ago in a time known in Hawaii as ka'anania, a time of peace and thriving when all this innovation, an explosion of production and peace existed. It's the time John Kaimikawa talked about ka'anania. This was before the Tahitians came and brought the hierarchy systems of the elite. See, if we want to recover these things, sorry, you got to go forward a bit to actually go fast. If we want to recover these things, we need to recover one more. That. ʻOhana ho, endearingly, emphatically, recover what it means to be ʻOhana. That every hana matters. Every person's hana matters. We need it. We need you to elevate it. We need you to develop it. You need me to develop it. And we need to have a do-over. This is not about change. This is about avatar. There's not a thing that I just shared that there's not a person in this room who doesn't know what I'm talking about. You know there's someplace inside your what we call now, inside your inside. You know what I'm talking about. It's probably the first time you've ever heard it this way, but you know it because it's in our DNA. When I took over, I'm going to stop right here. When I took over this organization 10 years ago as its CEO, it was, along with Aloha Airlines, probably the most bankrupt organization in Hawaii. Only difference is we didn't go away. And I was asked to take over this organization, not because I had any knowledge of economic development, because I did not. They didn't hire an economist. What they chose to hire was a healer. And today we've become a pretty solid organization in Hawaii. But about 3 months after I took over, there was a woman who worked for the federal government, and she worked for the Department of Commerce, and I had a meeting with her, and the first thing she said to me was, contrary to popular belief, I don't determine who gets grants and funding. First thing she said to me, which is very interesting because I didn't ask her for money. But that's, the reason why she shared that is because that's what everybody else asks her. See, my predecessor had fractured the relationships with this woman and her organization. And so I didn't meet with her to ask for money. There's no way. I said, Gail, that's not why I met with you. The reason why I'm meeting with you is I just want to know what you do so I can understand how maybe I can help support what you do. So then she said, so is this what you do? Is this your vision? To convene people? But she heard that that's what I do, convene people. I said, no, it's not my vision. I kind of hate it. That's the process. I kind of hate it. I wish I didn't have to do that. You want to hear my vision? She said, yeah. Kind of simple. I just hope that maybe someday my grandchildren or my great-grandchildren can come up to me. That was 10 years ago. My great-grandchildren or my grandchildren can come up to me and ask me these questions. Papa, is it true we used to have wars over oil? Papa, is it true that we had children who starved to death every day because they didn't have food? Papa, is it true that we had people that didn't have fresh drinking water? Is it true that we had children all over the world who couldn't choose to have the best education they wanted anywhere in the world? Papa, is it true that we had people who didn't have a safe place to sleep? Is it true? Is it true that we didn't take care of our kupuna? Is it true? I said, yeah, that's why I do what I do. I just hope that someday my grandchild or great-grandchild can come to me and just ask me those questions. Because if they can ask me the questions, that means we're done. Thank you so very much for allowing me to share today. Aloha. Oh, I want to show one more thing. I'm so sorry. One thing. I love mine. You put on your shirt probably the same way every day with either your left arm or your right arm. For me, it's left. So last year, you know, when you start to get old, stuff breaks down. So I had frozen shoulder last year. It's really painful. I found out that it was frozen because after 1 year it loosens up. But what happened was, I think this one felt so bad about what happened. This one is more sore this year, so I got frozen shoulder in this one. So when I put on my jacket and I leave with the left, right here, this is really painful. So what I did was, I decided, okay, maybe better if I just do this. Now I want you to watch. You see what's going on? You notice. Okay, down. Why did I just show this to you? I knew what I wanted to do. But because I don't have the muscle memory, we have exercised the muscles on the right so very much that what's atrophied is what's on the left. So just because you have heard and you know doesn't mean that we're going to use it. We have to exercise the muscles and recover these muscles. That's why Hawaii needs us. I mean, that's why the United Nations and Hawaii is a leader-designated hub, because I believe they need an epidemic to occur with the SDGs. And for me, the spark of that epidemic is Hawaii and the Aloha Plus Challenge. And how we do the Aloha Plus Challenge, I believe, is also many of the things that you folks are working on in this room today is right in alignment with those 6 things. But how we do it is that undergirding. It's not hung on work. It says we hung, we knock. But we need to start exercising that muscle. First, recognize we have it. Second, start to exercise it. So that pretty soon, that muscle is as strong as the transactional muscle. Okay? Hello, everyone.